This is Flowers on the Stage.
This year, we had an unbelievable experience. This was our second time playing at Burning Man. The first year was in 2022, and we played at Camp Reverbia, which was one of the only two live music camps in the entire Black Rock City. And they had us back for another year, and we were going to celebrate Pink Floyd's 50th anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon being released by doing a tribute set playing that entire album in full with Mr. Scott Page, who is a phenomenal saxophone player. And he toured and recorded with Pink Floyd and Toto and Supertramp. And so they flew him out in a private, a private helicopter or a private jet or what have you,
The
out to
camp
the
set
middle of
that
the
up?
desert. Yeah, the camp set that up. They had the connection for us. Yep. And so they set that up, and we had no rehearsal with Scott. It was really just hey, nice to meet you. We're about to share the stage in 2 hours and play this legendary album. And so there was a lot of pressure to really, recreate it faithfully. And I think we did a great job. But anyway, if you've been to Burning Man, you know that the way it kind of works traditionally is that there's so many things to do there, right? There's no one particular event or show that has a massive crowd unless you're Diplo or a huge electronic artist, right? There's just so many things you can be doing. So while there's so many people there, it's actually really hard to draw a large audience for one, particular thing. So we actually started setting up, and we had a 45-minute changeover from the last act before our set, and we could already see hordes of people just running up to the stage, lining up, art cars, in flashing neon psychedelic colors, stopping and parking and being, anticipating this set. So there was a lot of hype around it. And I remember just setting up my amp and turning around, seeing a good amount of people turning around, setting up my amp, turning back around what felt like 2 or 3 minutes later and seeing the crowd triple in size. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be something. This is actually going to be really special. And I was really excited and trying to hold it in, because I'm standing right next to a legendary saxophonist, and I'm trying not to gush too hard. And then I noticed that he's gushing crazy hard, and he's videotaping the crowd, and he's all smiles, and he's just laughing and getting so excited about it, even more so than I was. So I was like, all right, cool. I feel like I have permission now to kind of freak out a little bit about how cool this is going to be. And so we wound up playing the show to, I would say maybe close to the order of 10,000 people. Just amazing psychedelic colors as far as the eye could see in any direction, of people just really there for the music because it's such a special album. And it happened to be a full moon that night while we played. So very fitting. It was a cloudy night, but at certain moments, the clouds would sort of just open up and you'd see this full moon just shining right through. And when we played Us and Them, it started drizzling a little bit, which was the perfect song on that album to feel a little bit of rain, I thought, and then it stopped right as the song ended. And then we encored with a couple of songs from The Wall after the album. And we played Comfortably Numb. And as I was playing that solo, the front of house PA had a malfunction, and the left channel, the left speaker, literally caught fire and burned out while I was playing that solo. So that was a really, really cool, just rock and roll moment, I would say. And yeah, that kind of sums it up in a nutshell. That was that experience. It was truly one of the coolest moments I've ever had on a stage performing ever in my whole career.
Follow-up question, and this is for the whole band, but Dylan, you can start. Do you believe in coincidences?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it
Great question.
depends, A lot of times, I am guilty of saying I don't believe in coincidences of that magnitude, right? When people try to pass something off as a coincidence, I'm I don't know. I think in this scenario, I don't think it was a coincidence. I think it was all just the universe's way of saying, here you go. You earned this special moment. Enjoy it. And that's sort of the way that it felt.
What about from the rest of you? What do you take away from this? Was it a dream?
The serendipity was palpable. Like you could chew on it. It was so real. And for me, it's either all random or none of it's random. So the more positive vibes that I put out are the vibes of just playing that style of music and being around great musicians and great humans. That experience was just given to all of us at the right point, right time. It was so healing. It was so fun. It was rock and roll. And it was like, oh yeah, we're playing Great Gig in the Sky. And right now the full moon is peeking out above my head. Like I can't tell you the emotions and the feelings that I was feeling during that 45-minute to an hour set. It went by in a split second, and I wish I had a little bit more of it, right? But it was just so perfect. And when we played that set in retrospect in the weeks that, after the Burning Man, we got home, I was just like, oh my God, we leveled up. Like I actually belong. I can do this thing. We can do this thing. Music is meant for me to be, I'm meant to spread this love to everybody. And it was a nice little pat on the back from the universe saying like, keep going. You got this shit.
There's a lyric in one of our songs, 5th of July, that it's, there is no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah.
And I wrote that lyric, so I would say that I don't believe in coincidence either. But then the next line is, I stare into the universe and can't help but grin, which was pretty much that night in a nutshell. It was like we have worked our asses off to be here, and we just played so well with someone that was a part of this band, and we did it like pros. If it, like Will said, it felt like we leveled.
So I want to ask about this. So like there's no coincidences in this theoretical realm we're talking about that we're hearing right now. And so okay, this is a reinforcement of how hard you guys are working, that you like earned this moment. And like zooming out, introduce me to you guys as a band. Like who is Eminence Ensemble and like what's driving you guys?
One of my personal goals and like my mission statement, I think, as a musician, also falls in line with the band's overall mission statement. And like any band of our small size, we've rewritten our bio 18,000 times, right? And the last time we did it, there was a lot of thought, put into like, well, what are we? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to say? And I think where we wound up is generally our mission statement, our goal is to sort of bring people of all different walks of life together because of like this one shared experience, right? To create an experience that exists only at that place and in time, and unifies a bunch of people from all walks of life together and helps them escape from the pressures of their daily lives and all the things that are bothering them and that bringing them down, and just creating a space where we are making music together that just like sort of weaves a web of magic in the air and allows people to just feel stress free and experience joy and carry it with them in however long until their next live music experience in their daily lives, to sort of just escape from daily pressures. I think that's really what we're trying to do. I think deep down it's really about creating that magical space where people can come and just and be happy and be themselves. And
Yes.
that's really our goal, I think.
Yes, weaving a web of magic in the air.
That is a good quote, man. I like that one. I'll jump off of that real quick if I can.
Go for it.
The thing that I love about our style, when I joined the band, I was the last one to join right after Dylan, is every single member in the band has their own diverse set of influences, and we try and incorporate all of them. Like nothing's off limits, and everyone's super humble in the sense that they try and serve the song. I'm reminded of this quote from my high school basketball team. It was, we play the five best, not the best five. That's totally Eminence, but with six. We play the best six, not the six best, right? That means that we play as a team. And that team also incorporates the people from the audience and all the fans, because we don't know what the fuck we're going to do half the time either. So having that like humility of serving the song, and we're all in this mix together, and we've got all these crazy genres. Maybe I'll pull some jazz out. Tanner's been listening to Garth Brooks, so he loves that beat. We'll put some prog in and some reggae, like, anything goes. And so it's really just, it's a very spiritual band for me. We're serving music herself.
Herself. I love it. You are the man, dude.
Thanks, bro.
All of you. This is my kind of interview.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, Nick, what's up?
I would say just, I guess piggybacking off what Dylan said, because he said a lot in one thing, right? So I would say, like, music is an unbelievable form of expression. And I think the best part about it is that you can see other people expressing themselves through your expression. And I think that's, I don't know. I always want people to have fun when I'm playing music because I'm having fun when I'm playing music. And I think that in itself is the goal, right? You don't want people to show up at your concerts and not have fun. I don't think anyone wants that, but in the end, like if you are having fun at our show, then I feel we've done our job.
People expressing themselves through your expression.
That's
And that's
hot.
true. Like that is literally it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love how multiple of you guys have touched on the back and forth between the crowd and the band members on stage, because the energy that goes back and forth, I think, in a show for both an audience and someone on stage is so important. And you guys really treat it like that. I mean, I think 3 out of all of you guys mentioned something about that.
This is Flowers on the Stage, a podcast about being creative and finding success. To support it, please check out our sponsors, New Belgium Brewing, Thrax CBD, and Ticket Relief, the ticketing company that plants trees with a portion of each ticket sold. And now, back to the episode.
The energy exchange associated with live performance, in particular in music, is something that has always baffled me and something I think about frequently when I perform, especially when I'm improvising, right? It's like, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to play. I have this idea now that began as electrical energy in my brain of neurons firing off, right? And then that gets converted to mechanical energy of my fingers moving and playing the guitar. That becomes vibrational energy of a string, electrical energy from the picking up those vibrations. Then it turns back into mechanical energy when the speaker of my amp vibrates. And then the microphone that picks it up converts that to electrical energy. And then it comes out of the speakers in front of the crowd, in front of house, in mechanical energy of sound waves moving. And then that results in mechanical energy of people dancing after they then internalize it and convert it to electrical energy in their heads and react to it emotionally and start moving around. And that is happening instantaneously, all of these forms of energy exchange. And their energy then, in response to whatever you started doing, then fuels your decisions that you continue to make as you're improvising. So it's this conversation that you're having in real time with the audience without any words. And there's like 20 plus different moments of energy being converted to different forms to make it happen. And I think that is so incredible and unique to music and live performance.
That makes me think, though, back to Will, what you said, like all that energy is going on, but that would be complete chaos if you all weren't a unit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear of what kind of challenges outside of actual music and the music part of this whole business, because at the end of the day, that is what it is when you're running a band. What kind of challenges have you guys experienced? You've been a band for many years, and have you guys gone past them?
So when I came into the band, I had a little bit of experience playing in live bands, but I was primarily a jazz pianist and classically trained. And so I had to deal with the new amplification and using in-ears and finding my own mix and finding my place in this already well constructed band. And I had my own individual struggles as well. Like through recovery, I've been sober for 8 years, so I had to learn to navigate the territory that I was getting into, the green rooms and the live music venue. And You know, left to my own devices, I probably wouldn't have handled all that stuff very well. But I had a team that was helping me. And every time that I had like an internal individual breakdown, which probably affects the group as well, the group didn't turn around and shame me or guilt me for it. They met me where I was at. They loved me as a human being and they were patient with me as I fixed what I needed to fix and we got better as a group. And so I would say, whatever problem we've had, if there is any, we have a great communication amongst the six of us and just an unconditional love that's there first and foremost. And we know that if we take care of that, everything else will take care of itself. And that's been my experience. Like I've had some tumultuous times, you know, being sober in this in this community and trying to put out my best creative energy, working on inner child work and shadow work at the same time. And these guys have carried my hand through all of it.
Love the vulnerability. That's a hard thing to come out and say on a microphone like that.
Hey, I wear it on my sleeve just to help the next guy down the line.
Respect.
You know, that's hopefully it helps somebody. You know, you can recover.
On the other side of it, it's hard to like not get too sucked into the party side of it. Like it's difficult at times to separate like when it's time to work and when it's time to play. And I think we've gotten really good at that. But even like the night before a show or like how you treat your body, you know, in between rehearsals and all, and how you react to people, you know, with ideas or constructive criticism in the rehearsal space or on stage. And kind of keeping your head above water in that realm while still doing it financially too. It's like balancing the work that it takes to be in a band and the work that it takes to actually live and survive, eat, all that.
I want to linger on something you just said a little bit. It is not easy to give feedback and like critique internally in a way that is uplifting. Like it can be really hard to take feedback and criticism, especially when it's about something you've made, like your art, whatever that might be. Being in a band, having like a collective vision that's not necessarily your independent vision. Can you guys like educate me on what's most important when kind of internally having that feedback for each other and how you guys do that right?
For me, I think, you know, you're absolutely right. That is inevitable, right? That is like just a given, being in a band, especially a 6-piece band. It's like being in a 6-way polyamorous relationship, right? Woo! And so communication is key. It's incredibly key, as is the root of any relationship. So I think for me, whenever I have a piece of constructive criticism to say to one of my bandmates or multiple, or really just like to anybody in my life in general, right? I think it's very important to preface it properly and also follow up afterwards properly as well. I find that it's way more effective to bring something like that up if you preface it with a compliment or something that is genuine that you really actually like about what is happening, right? And so if I hear a new song that someone, you know, sent to me and I like, the first thing I really notice is like, ooh, I think the chorus isn't really as good as it could be, but you know, the chorus really should be better, but I really like the verse. Well, it might be like a human, like natural tendency to just be like, I don't like the chorus, but rather I'll say, hey, that verse is awesome. You know, that verse is like incredible. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like the chorus isn't as good. The verse like sets such a high standard for the song that the chorus is falling flat. And I think that there are a couple of ways that we can make it better. And better yet, I would like to offer some solutions because I really can't stand. I think it's counterproductive when people provide criticism, but don't really provide any sort of solution at the same time. They just complain without offering anything, right? So I'll start by saying something I really like, and then I will deliver whatever piece of criticism it is. And then I'll try to tie it all together by then saying something, you know, affirming and positive at the end so that I think it's well received and you don't leave the person on the receiving end on the defense. So that's pretty critical for me. And I try to be very intentional about that whenever I communicate.
I think going off that, timing is everything. Um, Oftentimes when I've found when you feel something right in that moment and you bring it up in that moment, it will rarely go the way that you want it to. You kind of have to like you have to hear yourself have that conversation in your head before you open up and like call someone out about something they played or how they're acting, whatever. But I think, if say the person that you were constructively criticizing was hungover from last night, I'm gonna let them recover until they're like able to deal and they have a little bit more brain cells and won't be as reactive and a little bit more understanding.
Yeah, for me, it's knowing the setting that I'm in. Like if I'm in my house right here, right now, and Dylan came up and was like, "Hey, dude, you got to change that piano part to that thing you're recording for yourself," I'd probably be like a little bit more defensive and be like, "Well, you know what? I'm not going to do that." But since I'm in the setting with my five best friends and we're doing this as a band, I have to really be responsible for my own reactions and emotions. So if someone gives me constructive criticism, I need to give it its time. Maybe I disagree with that, but I have to honor that this is part of a team and it's not just my opinion. And it's not a personal attack on me either. I have to remind myself that pretty frequently because music, as you said, is very personal, very attached to our emotions. And so if I'm playing something and let's say Tanner didn't really like the rhythm or we weren't matching up on that rhythm, we would talk and figure out constructively how to make that serve the song better and how to do it together rather than just say like, hey, you need to change what you're doing. Well, maybe it's we meet in the middle, who knows, right? But having that open communication and knowing that we're trying to serve the group rather than make it all about ourselves is kind of what I hone in on.
Yeah, like not taking it personally
Yep.
and letting it land without being defensive, even if you don't agree with it. Like still,
Exactly.
I had a question kind of off of that. So you were mentioning when you're talking about your parts, and if someone asks you to change something, do you guys write music together a lot? So then does your songwriting, is it a result of what you're talking about here, where it's like maybe someone has an idea and then the next person's like, hey, what if we tried adding a double chorus at the end, and then you run it together, or you guys each kind of arrange everything by yourselves and then bring it to the table? How does that work?
It's a little bit of both. We more arrange the songs and like we try and spice up the songs because we haven't had too many opportunities with this lineup to write in the same room together. So a lot of it is like we'll bring an idea or a set of ideas to the band and then they'll decorate it with what they have, like not so much the foundational composition, but like how it sounds, how it's sonically represented.
Well, and like Justin said, it's a combination. I remember Justin also wrote Moonshine pretty much straightforward. And obviously Dylan and I added our solos, we all added our parts. But I do remember like a distinct point right before Dylan's solo, we were all together getting it ready for like a live set. And we were like, we should add a few bars here, or like we should change this up a little bit from the album. And that was like, that's how we incorporate going from our album to our live sound, right? There are slight differences in all of our written tunes. If someone brings it to the table, we'll kind of like mess with it a little bit for the live setting as well. Worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things here in bands live, that I listen to their studio stuff, is those extra, like, oh, they do a double bridge here, and the solo section actually has a whole nother backing to it that isn't on the studio album. Yeah, I love hearing that.
I could be wrong here, but I feel like when you listen to an Eminence Ensemble album or just a live show, the songs that were written together tend to be the more like goofy ones. Like I think Moonshine is kind of more goofy than most of the other songs because I feel it was written a little bit more collectively. I think that that's a unique thing to look at. And honestly, I never had even thought about it until your question. But yeah, it's funny how some of the more serious songs, and it kind of makes sense. Some of the more serious songs, the ones that you're by yourself and you're in your own mind. And then the songs that are a little more playful, a little bit more adventurous and fun, are songs you wrote as a group?
Changing topics a little bit to non-musical stuff. I'd love to hear, outside of band members, who has been the most important member of your guys' team, whether that's management, anyone that's helped you guys on the road, or anything like that.
The two people that come to mind for me are Taylor Hines and Kaylee Greer. At least during my time with the band, Taylor Hines is the sound man of sound men, right? He's creme de la creme. He's one of our best friends, and he makes us sound so good every time we get on stage with him. Kaylee has been our manager for about the last year, and she has done a lot pushing us forward into this new EE 2.0, if you will, since Dylan and I have joined. So I want to give a shout out to Kaylee and Taylor. Worth mentioning Jason Morris as well. Jason's been in our corner for, I think, since he saw the band open for Humphreys McGee. He was like, how can I help you guys out? And Jason's been in our corner helping us doing money management and the business side of things from time to time, and just being a great guy. So also shout out to Jason.
I'd love to ask you guys a little change of topic here, but as working musicians, obviously you guys are passionate about music. Your passion has now become your career. And how do you guys balance that? What do you guys do outside of music to keep you guys sane? What do you guys like to do? Or are you guys just head down, all music, grinding all day?
Outside of music, I do all things audio. I'm an audio engineer. And I also work with other bands, which is musically related, of course, to produce music for them. But I do lots of work in the commercial audio realm of things. Like I do a lot of work on Ford F-150 commercials, and, all things audio, for podcasts or TV shows or movies or, really anything that has sound, guided tours in museums, all of that. So I'm like happiest, aside from playing music and playing guitar, I am happiest when I am behind a desk making something sound amazing.
Being in a band, you're all wearing different hats, and a lot of it is like leading yourself to get yourself to the best version to contribute to the band. But then there's also like actual band leadership, like leading the crew. And, looking at both of those perspectives, what have you all learned is most important when it comes to being a great leader?
I think accountability is everything. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you're not going to get near as far as the people that do it. And we're all guilty of that a little bit. But I would say that I think something that helps me focus is when I'm exercising regularly, I can like more hone in on music and then have like a clear time with the music and how to get it into people's ears and stuff.
Yeah, first word that came to mind was listening. We sit in a circle rather than stand in a line. There's no pecking order. And so a true leader in my mind listens and is part of the whole circle, not just like one person on a pedestal yelling at everybody. I've had different bands that worked like that, and it didn't function properly, or businesses. So sit in a circle, instead of standing in a line, and leaders need to be listening to everybody.
I feel inspired to say to you right now, what else?
Humility and being right-sized, meaning knowing what to listen to and incorporate and what not to, but being willing to listen to all the different pieces that are coming to you and then figure out which one belongs. So the humility of being right-sized in addition to listening.
That feels so much like making music, what you just said, though.
It kind of is. It kind of mirrors that. And in life in general, like a leader doesn't have to be a designated leader. You can embody what a leader is, and you can help anybody in your near vicinity. A true leader lifts people up around them rather than beats them down. And so however I can make that happen in a musical setting or in a recovery setting, the better. By the way, most of this stuff that I've chimed in on about comes from recovery. Like that's where I learned most of these phrases and things.
I mean, you talk about recovery, like what a challenge. It's such a challenge. Like you need obviously strong principles to be able to get through that. So it's like no surprise they apply holistically.
Agreed, agreed. And recovery may be tough at the beginning, but it is very worth it and is nothing but a blessing for anybody that's trying to get into it.
I would say that a very important aspect to anyone who's a good leader is someone who embraces what people bring to the table and within that embrace magnify those things. Does that make sense? So someone, you always got to acknowledge and embrace and magnify. That's what I think. A good leader makes everyone around them better, and hopefully that the people around them make them better too.
The ability to admit when you're wrong. That is a really hard thing. It takes a very strong-willed and confident person to be able to admit when they're wrong. It's something that I think is just so hard for everybody. And I think it's so admirable when someone is able to do that. And I think it makes you even more of a valuable leader and setting a great example by being able to say, hey, even though like this is my role or what have you, I was wrong, right? And I'm not afraid to admit it.
And so I've got, I think, a good question to tie a bow on this. And let's go in reverse order here, starting with you, Dylan. What aspects of music come to mind when you think of the best improvised music?
One, I think, is the most obvious: tension and release, right? That is really what we latch onto emotionally as listeners, right? And that's really what kind of keeps the world going round, right? It's like it's all about the build up and tension, and boom, this explosion, right? I think bands that are able to really achieve that and take their listeners on a ride, right, are very successful in, I think, creating jams that are historical and legendary. And every band does that in their own way, right? Every band has their own unique sonic footprint and sonic stamp or fingerprint on how they go about doing that. So tension and release. And I think one thing that I am guilty of sometimes not doing because I'm too lost in the moment and excited is listening, big ears, right? When everybody in the band is really listening to what else is happening and thinking, how can I add to what my bandmates are doing rather than what is the coolest thing I can do individually, right? And they serve the song maturely and very musically. I think that lends itself to greatness. And then I just thought of a third as well, I think, is taking risks, right? A lot of times the best jams are born out of like unstable territory on thin ice. Like maybe an accident happens and you don't know how to recover from it and everyone is thrown out of their comfort zone. Well, sometimes that can lead to a jam that falls on its base, right? Like it definitely can, but there are other times where that can birth something completely unexpected and beautiful and make for really incredible improvisation when everyone is kind of out of their comfort zone and a little bit scared to just go off and way more willing to listen because they're unsure of what to do.
Yeah, I feel like as a fan, like knowing when there's risk there, like this person's doing something that maybe they're not, like you can't just go through the motions because it's not, you haven't done it before. Like no, feeling that demeanor as a fan from the musician is part of what makes it awesome.
Totally. It's like, yeah, we're both experiencing this brand new space together, you know?
That communication where the more you play together, the more you do understand like where you make like choices that you may make, and I can make that choice with you. And we also communicate through a talkback too. So if there's like a big, like if we want a big moment change or a big chord change, we can all communicate that. But mainly, I think it's habits that we kind of all grasp onto, where it's like, oh, maybe Dylan's doing this cool like delayed octave tone. So I should be doing more, like he's doing more rhythmic stuff. I should be doing more textural stuff. And if it's right, we can intertwine some rhythms together, which we do really well sometimes. And, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but that's back to the risk taking. And then
Right.
on that level, dynamics are so important. Like for a jam to get really big and then really quiet, like I like the motion of that. Like I think some of my favorite jams are the super quiet ambient. I think they call it like the breath jams, where it's just you're kind of all just sitting there and you have enough space in the room to think these wild thoughts and like these bigger ideas. And so I call it like big thought music when there's a lot of space and sometimes like a bigger beat. But and something that goes with that is having a good mix. If you can't hear everyone in the band, you can't communicate with everyone. And like that, I think that's a big foundation towards having a great jam.
Yeah, and you mentioned those like big breathing jams. Those are my favorite. Like those when they hit
Yeah.
are unreal. For real. Like
So good.
Will,
Awesome.
what are your favorite
Favorite.
aspects of improvised music that you feel like make up why your jams are just your favorite jams, either as a fan or ones you've been a part of, are just so great?
Extremely dense jazz piano chords all the time, tons of layers of that. No, I'm just kidding. That's how I came into the band, but now I know that it's space. It really is. Like I don't know if you've read the book The Music Lesson by Victor Wooten.
I actually have. It's an amazing book. That's
You
an
know that
amazing book.
You know that chapter where he's talking about the best solo he ever heard, where it was like a drummer and he stopped on one and the entire room felt the beat for the next like 16 bars. And then he came back in and that was like the one note solo that broke his mind. That's what I'm talking about. And that's something that I try and emulate every time I play. But and that comes with a trust for the band, right? To sit in that space, you have to trust that your other players are listening to you as well. So for me, it's space and trust.
I want to ask you to linger on that though. Like I've read that book, but people listening to this probably haven't. Like, can you describe what you were referring to with that Victor Wooten example?
Yeah, so Victor Wooten was talking about, I guess, notes and rhythm and more of his other elements of music, which I think it was like space, dynamics, tone, articulation, listening, emotion, a few others.
The memory on this guy.
Well, I love that book because I use it to teach a lot of people, and it's very like similar to recovery concepts as well. So if you're a musician and you haven't read that book taught me more about how to be a musician than any other textbook or class that I've ever had.
And
so
there's no notes in.
There's no notes in
it's
it.
all concepts.
It's all like spiritual concepts, and like whether or not you want to believe this, his subconscious basically manifests into a person and teaches him about each one of these elements. And I think it's when he's talking in relation to rhythm, but he was saying the most impactful rhythm is one that can be felt by the audience. And he said that the most influential solo that he ever heard or took maybe was he hit one note on the downbeat and the groove was going so hard that the entire band stopped playing for 16 bars or whatever, and the audience still felt the pulse of that jam that was going on beforehand. And then when he came back in 16 bars later, the room lost themselves. Like it was absolutely mind-blowing because everyone felt that groove so hard because that space was created that when he put even more space in, it was heard by the audience and felt by the band and everyone in the room. And then when it came back in, that note meant so much because in the absence of notes, then we'll have a note. You know, it's the negative space theory. It's like, well, we can't have notes without space. And he just played with that concept to its extreme. And I really try and take that to heart because if we all start with space in a jam, now, not all the time you want to start coming up from nothing. Sometimes you want to come out hot. But when we start from nothing, there's space and there's listening and there's breath. Right. And that's what I love the most about a good jam is the build, the space that created at the beginning and then where we get to at the end. And you're like, how the hell did that happen?
Hell yeah. Well, you know, if you're listening to this right now, sounds a lot like we're all kind of like-minded people. I bet. I'd
say
like,
so.
Like, I wonder what these guys' music sounds like. It must be pretty good.
Check it out. I think it's pretty good myself.
You tell us.
So Inside Looking Out, speaking of music, new LP came out, from Eminence Ensemble. New LP, Inside Looking Out. We're gonna have a link in the description. But yeah, as we're wrapping up here, would love to hear you guys kind of just chat about that.
We are so excited to have this out. It's the first full-length release from the studio that we have dropped since Will and I have joined the band. And I think it really, represents a big step up for the band in songwriting and production quality and intent, and just the band's ability to make a cohesive piece of art. And it's been a long time coming. We actually recorded this album in September of 2022, and it was finished at the beginning of 2023. And we were just waiting for the right time to drop it. And can't really believe that it's out now. But for me personally, I'm so excited now when people are like, oh, let me listen to your band. I found you on Spotify. And I don't have to say like, oh, well, all the stuff you're going to find is old and from before I was in the band. Like now I can be like, yes, listen to this album that just came out. We're really proud of it. I think it like represents our, there's a huge emphasis on songwriting. And we tried to stay true to all the things that we do as a band and all of our tendencies and our identity as Eminence Ensemble, but with an emphasis on like just writing good songs that will get stuck in your head and have good hooks and are well thought out and well arranged and new. And I think every song feels drastically different than the previous, but still feels like it's cut from the same cloth. And it really takes the listener on an experience.
Hell yeah. I
Yeah.
can't wait to check it out.
Basically, during the pandemic, we were all writing just crazy amounts of maybe just ideas or full songs. And so one day we had like a list, I think, of 40 songs. And we're like, okay, well, we want to put out an album that is going to get everyone's attention, like an album that will maybe have a bigger spread than say our next album, that if we gain all those fans in the first album, then we can kind of like expand what we're trying to do musically. So we called it the Palatable album. And I think it just turned out so cool because it was all the stops that I want to hear in music. Like, there's like super awesome guitar harmonies, and then it'll break down to some really cool jazz chords and like some colorful textures, and then it'll come back with some powerful hooks. And it's just all the things in music that I think we want to hear. And we were able to capture damn near all of them without losing the naturalness of the album.
The whole album is just it, like Dylan said, it's so nice to like have a product out there now that I can be like, hey, this is what it sounds like with me in the band. Although the first two albums, fucking phenomenal work. And I love all those songs, love playing them live too. I will say some of my favorite parts in this album, the music is amazing, and I support what Justin and Dylan have said about that. All the little intricacies, like the little additions that we put in after the fact, make me smile so much. It's filled with character and filled with love and filled with all of our goofiness and all of our seriousness and all of the in between, the light, the dark, the fast-paced prog, the slow jazz, the reggae, the rock, like everything across the board. It's just a diverse set of worlds. And every time I jump into it, something different makes me smile every time. And I knew what we did in the entire album, and it still catches me off guard. And I'm like, yeah, that's my boys.
Man, you guys got a spark. You guys got a spark. I love your vibe. Some genuine, awesome, charismatic dudes. Eminence Ensemble. Everyone out there listening, round of applause for these guys, all that they're doing. We got links in the description. Check out the LP we're talking about. Check out their website. Find them on socials. All that good stuff. Guys, thanks so much for joining me here. And also, everyone out there listening, got Ricky Faria co-hosting this pod, the hip snacks, and all his other good stuff. We're going to have a link to catch up with him here too. But yeah, much love, y'all.